Should we get going, everybody? Let's get going. So thank you very much for joining in this session. And what I'd love to know is just if we kick off with talk in pairs and send us a message in the chat. So when you consider this whole program that this journey that we've been on for 6 months, and we haven't talked for the last month, it would be really nice just to have a little recap of where you're at and what you've been doing differently since we started. And if you've done nothing, you need to do something. So let's just spend 2 minutes in your groups having a think about that. Okay, so we've had 2 minutes, and if you would like to put something in about what you've been doing differently since this program started, if you want to put it in chat as we go through, that would be great. And otherwise, I think we should move on. It would just be very interesting to hear from all of you who are here. And thank you very much. I see that we've got Willowbrook, just a shout out for some people, not everybody. If you arrive early, I can give you a shout out. Woohoo! So shout out to North London, Prospect, St Luke's, Peace. And if you want to shout out, pop it in chat and I'll give you a shout out. But it's wonderful to be this community, this virtual community, taking part in this process. So thank you very much for joining us. Now, for those of you who've been with me before, you know that what I like to do is to show you a photograph. So here is my photo of the week, and I'm afraid to say I tweeted that, and I said, as you've been framed, this is my daughter, and we know that when we're looking at the casita model, which I'll come to in a minute, and just as a reminder that your family are enormous support to you, and this is my daughter, and we went out to look at an exhibition on the bank holiday. So she's a huge support to me. I try to be a support to her, but it's worth reflecting on in friends, family, how much they contribute to our resilience. And I always give you a top tip. So my top tip for today is this. When you think about what you have in life, what we tend to do is consider what we don't have, and so we compare up. And by comparing up, what I mean is you think about somebody who's got a new car or a promotion or a bonus, and that you don't have those things. But we know that you're made happier if you compare down and consider what you do have in relation to people less well off than you. So we do have our health, we do have enough to eat today, we can manage for today. So top tip, and this was really interesting research that came out of silver medalists in Olympians, and psychologists noticed that how miserable they looked. And look, these are all people who won silver Olympic medals, and they look like they've just lost, they've come bottom, because what they're doing is they're going, wow, if we were a 1/6 of a second better or a 1/4 of a point better, we would have got gold. And so when you look at who's happiest, of course it's the gold medalists, and then very, very close behind it's the bronze, because the bronze medalists are going, wow, we nearly didn't get anything, we nearly didn't get a medal. And then it's the silver Olympians who are statistically significantly worse off in terms of how they feel about what they've done. And so I just thought those were fun photos to show you. So tip of today, compare down, don't compare up. So for those of you who've got to leave early, there it is, that's our tip of today. Back to the casita model, which I always touch on. So what we're going to do in this particular session, which is going to last 60 minutes, we're going to take up our full hour, we're going to be looking at skills. So on the first floor, I've touched on the basement and the relationships that you have, family relationships, and we're going to be looking at the skills and how you build skills, and particularly tools for you, for mind and body. So that was what this particular session is, because we are in how to generate a positive mindset. So when we look at the whole journey that we've gone through so far about what resilience is, peer coaching, the wheel of life, energy, the strengths exercise that we did, what you can control, and team resilience last time. And if you remember the team resilience last time, what I shared with you was this tool to take back to the team and have a discussion about. So that's what we did last time. And again, it would be fab if any of you want to think about how team resilience is and pop some messages into chat. And I'm just going to stop for a no. We got some feedback in this room, some sound feedback. Fantastic. So we're going to move on to team resilience, and today we're going to be thinking about how to generate a positive mindset. And quick stand back from that. Why bother to do that? Well, as you know, lots of people talk about energy drains and energy vampires versus an energy radiator. And one of the big things in maintaining your personal resilience is to think about not only what other people do, but you. Because we can all be an energy drain or an energy vampire in certain circumstances, and we can all radiate energy in others. And so the question is, how do you manage your state? Because when you radiate that energy for other people, spread it to two additional people. So if I'm having a great warm interaction and positive interaction with Marie, and we get lots of things done, she'll disappear and have a lovely warm interaction in turn with Antonia, who will disappear in her turn and have a lovely warm interaction with Julie. So it goes to 3 degrees. That's what we talk about. So that's how it happens. So that's why it's so important to think about, how do I manage myself? Because we have this what's called contaminating effect. Lovely. Or positive effect. Now, let's think about positivity. I just want to tell you about this gorgeous piece of research done by someone called Dan Wegner. And he took up some of Freud's research, which is the impossibility of thinking about a negative and cognitively difficult task. So his great series of experiments in life, and unfortunately he's passed away, was thinking or not thinking about the white bear. And he would set his participants in his experiment a task of, you must not think about a white bear. And of course, the only way that you can check that you're not thinking about the white bear is to think about the white bear. So people could do it for a maximum of about 15, 17, 22 seconds. So we cannot extract ourselves from a negative task. So here's a lovely example of his work and the proof of that. So if you look, this is one experiment that he ran, and he was telling people, right, to hold a pendulum, and in situation A, hold the pendulum steady, right? That's a neutral task, right? It's not positive, it's not negative, but just hold the pendulum steady, and to see when a experimental, can't think of the word, what's the word?
Pendulum.
No, the person who comes in, the person taking part in the experiment. Just to hold the pendulum steady, see what happens. So that's what they're told. That's A as a result. Now B is, right, you have to hold the pendulum steady, but you must keep it from swinging parallel. So you tell, the minute that you told don't do something, it gets bigger, right? Now, situation C is, right, hold the pendulum steady and count backwards from 1,000 in 3s. So it's getting more complicated. And situation D is, right, keep it from swinging parallel, negative, to the arrow, mustn't swing parallel to the arrow, while counting backwards from 1,000 in 3s. So you see, the more negative, the more complex the task is, the more likely we are to fail in it. So it's why we have to at least express things neutrally and where we can positively, because sure as eggs are eggs, and I've said this to you before, shout at a child, don't run, you'll fall, and they'll tumble over. So expressing something positively helps us all perform better, is the first thing. So expressing something positively is great, but what happens if physically you're not feeling fabulous? So one of the things to think about first, and I'm going to run you through 3 body tools, 6 mind tools, and then I'm going to ask you to pick some and one to work with each other. So that's what we're going to do for the rest of the session. So body tool first. Now, how many of you have been through an airport and you have been asked to get into a scanner? Because I know that pretty much I failed to take my hand gel out or something like that, and I'm whisked into the scanner, or my shoes go beep. Last time it was my bra wouldn't stop beeping. Anyway. So we are scanned by other people, we are scanned by doctors, and you know that clinical staff will often scan you when you come in just to see how you're doing. Okay, that scan. But how often do we scan ourselves? We don't scan ourselves very much. So I'd like to do a quick body scan with you. So what I'm going to do is, hang on just a minute, I've got something on screen here which I can't get rid of. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to ask you to sit with your feet on the floor, and I'm going to ask you to put your bum into the back of your seat, and I'm going to ask you just to take a nice deep breath. And as you take a nice deep breath, just consider where in your body from head to toe, just scan your head, your chest, stomach, arms, legs, and just keep breathing. And just see, where do you carry any tension? And just take a nice deep breath and send your breath to any area that you might be carrying tension in. So I can feel I've got quite tense hands, so I'm just going to give my hands a little shake. And that's all you do when you do a body scan. So scan and breathe. So thank you very much for doing that with me. And now what we're going to do, we're going to up the energy a bit. And there's been some very nice research that was done a few years ago by Amy Cuddy. And yes, there's been some challenges to that research, but I do think that if you know that you get energy from moving, and most of us do, that we should do some moving. And so what I'm going to invite you all to do now is to stand up, and let's do the high power posing just for a few seconds. So stand up, and you can see on the screen, you have the option of doing 2 or 3 things. So you can stand with your legs wide if you like, and just have a breathe, or you can put your arms up. And so just put your arms up, let's stretch. And if you want to grab one wrist, because I quite like to grab a wrist and have an even bigger stretch, pull it up, grab the other wrist and pull it up. Oh, I can feel my shoulders are all tense as well. And I do that. And I might just bring my arms down to my hips. And if you want to give them a wiggle, you can give your hips a wiggle in one direction and give them a wiggle in the other. So, let's get a wiggle on. And finally, if you want to put your hands behind your head, and I quite like to make little backwards because I'm going to have to hit my shoulders. You can hear someone smiling. Okay, so that's another. Right, we've done our energy scan, and yeah, I'm going to give my hands another shake because that's where I take my tension in my thumbs, and you give them a quick little massage. So it may not be high power, but it may also just be about how do you get some energy back for yourself, because resilience and energy we've already said. So a little quick hit, that's a second tool that you can use for yourself. So what's another tool? Now this is not something that we can do, I don't think, but I really did want to share this with you because forest bathing is, believe it or not, Shinrin-yoku, which I say to my husband a lot these days because I came across this research about 6 months ago. Let's go out for some forest bathing. And there is some wonderful research that has been done by someone called Li Ching, and I put the reference at the bottom. But it looks really clear that when you take yourself out into the woods, and that what they've done in Japan is they spent a lot of money on this. They spent $4 million. Only the Japanese could. But I think it's fantastic because if this all adds to our body of knowledge, then we should use it. So what the Japanese have done, for example, is sit people for 15 minutes in the middle of a motorway and sit people for 15 minutes in the middle of a wood to see how you feel at the end of that. But the very simple thing is to go for a meander in the wood. Why do this? Because when blood samples are taken, there are 2 things that happen. One, 15 minutes in the wood reduces your cortisol considerably. But the other thing is your natural killer cells, your NK cells, increase exponentially for a very significant period for a week, but significantly for a month, just after 15 minutes in a wood. So, and they think that that's because there's something called phytoncide, which the trees give off, which protects them from the leaves from being eaten by insects. So it enhances your NK function, and that is very important. So forest bathing, how can you do that? Well, lots of you have got fantastic gardens, and you can get the same effect from going just to sit under a tree. And an additional lovely little thing to do is to take a pebble and to give your, to express your pebble, think about to express your problem to your pebble, and then just sit under the tree, leave your pebble under the tree. Obviously that's easier in a wood, but very few people that I've come across want to take the pebble back with them when they go back into work. So that's just a very nice thing to symbolize the problem that you have got, your thoughts about it, and you may not deal with it when you're in your forest bathing, you just leave it there. Because you don't have to carry all these things around with you. So that's the third tool. So now we're going to move into some mind tools. Now the first mind tool that I want to share with you is about your mindset. So I'm sure that some of you will know about Carol Dweck's research, and there's a link at the bottom of the presentation here into her work. And she did some really, really important stuff, and particularly for those of you who've got children, you might want to think about this, about fixed mindset and growth mindset. So what is a fixed and what is a growth mindset? So a fixed mindset, and this affects children's performance. So a fixed mindset is when you think that success is based on your innate talent, and that innate talent then becomes a problem, because what then if you believe that you get results because you are born clever, if you fail, it means that you'll retreat from a task, because the goal then becomes to not look stupid and to avoid risk, because otherwise you're damaging your self-esteem and your self-belief about yourself. Whereas a growth mindset is all about now talents and abilities can be developed, and you, through effort, persistence, how you approach a task, the strategies that you have, that you can achieve a goal. So you want to praise people for that effort that they put in rather than who they are. And that has a huge impact on how children try, and there's been lots and lots of research about that. But there's some really interesting new research that only came out this year, which is similar in the resilience field, and our mindset about resilience affects then how we actually approach a situation. And that's the most important thing. Our mindset about resilience affects how we approach a situation. So when you think about your stress mindset and how you view stress, do you think it as something that's enhancing and growth, or debilitating and fixed? Now, of course, this isn't going to be generalized. We will all have fixed and growth mindset about different situations. So, for example, you could get a fixed stress mindset about an individual. It could be, oh, crikey, I'm going into a meeting with Jess. Wow, that woman cheeses me off. Gosh, she's irritating. And then that stress mindset will impact and affect how you then deal with me. So one of the things that's worth thinking about, and especially if we're going to come back to this, is what do you think and approach with a growth mindset, and what do you think and approach with a debilitating or a fixed mindset? Because if you think you can't, you absolutely can't. So let's just tell you about this research which I came across very recently, Crum's research, and I put the link again at the bottom. So his research, or his team's research, has come across stressors, and when people approach them with this growth mindset, this enhancing mindset, is that they perform better, they feel better, they adapt better, and they have higher DHEAS at the end of it, which is, again, it's that hormone that helps with resilience, or that builds towards more cortisol. So when do you think this situation is helping me to develop my capacity to cope well, or teaching me how to deal with these situations and not? And this is very important if you're working as a team leader, that you think about and try and find out in a coaching approach about what others' mindsets are, because you can't change their mind, you can't help them change their thoughts about something without understanding, do they have a fixed mindset about this? Do they actually think that they can cope and that things can change? Because if they don't, there's no point teaching them how to approach something. So for you, this is a very important tool to think before you go into something and try and manage it. How are you thinking about how you think? So it's a metacognitive tool, and that's the most important thing. And by the way, praising others for a growth mindset, well, you'll get more of it. And that means I really like how you tried to solve this problem. I really appreciate the effort that you put into dealing with this particular thing, because it encourages more of it. So there's the reference for you for later. So then when you get to the situation, so we've thought about your mindset, and now we get to reframing, and this is very, very key. So if there's one thing you take away from this particular session, it should be about reframing, not only comparing, not up but down, but reframing. And I'm sure that many of you will come across this, because you can change a meaning that you give to an event, but you can't change the event. But you change the meaning that you give to an event, then it helps you get some perspective on it. So listen to your self-talk and listen to other self-talk is really important. And those trigger words, if you hear somebody saying, I can't, it always, never, this is a trigger for saying, okay, maybe there's a reframe that's required here. And the assumptions that you have around something. So I can't deal with Jess, I can never work with that woman. Well, never isn't very helpful. I mean, of course you could work with me. We might have to have a conversation. And if you say to yourself, well, I'm on my way to dealing or learning how to deal with Jess, that would be a more helpful attribute. And so how you give it the best interpretation you conceivably could, because we tend not to do that. It's only the thinking that makes something bad. As Hamlet said in Shakespeare, there's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. And I don't know if you've done what I've done, which is I've got myself in a rare old rage in a car driving along by myself, when I was feeling perfectly fine and just imagining how something could play out and imagining it to be most negative rather than most positive. And I do catch myself now, because what I want to do is amend the self-talk to reframe. So I would like us to work now, and for the next 5 minutes on these, I'd like you to get into pairs for 5 minutes, and I'd like you to think about how could you reframe these particular thoughts. So is a relative very demanding? Or ... How could we reframe that to be the most positive interpretation of a relative? Is the patient very challenging? Or how else could we reframe that? Are our peers and colleagues lazy? When we eat chocolate on a diet, are we failing? Because these are things that we tell ourselves, and then that's how we react to them. So reframing will help us deal with that. So we've got 5 minutes, get into pairs, and write these things down. If you want to put them in chat, do, and then we'll have a quick debrief in 5 minutes. All right, so let's have a look at, these are some things that I thought as possible answers. Is a relative very demanding, or are they an advocate for their loved one? Is a patient challenging, or do they have unmet emotional needs? Are they struggling with dying, fighting? Like we've all been told, you must go in and fight this thing. So if that's your mindset, fighting, of course you're going to be challenging. But if we don't understand that, we'll interpret it potentially in not the most positive way we could. So are our peers lazy, or have they got different motivators, other standards, better priorities? So that's a way that we can reframe, and then we might be more gentle with them and approach them in a way that means that we enable their resilience and our own. We don't rub up against each other. Another reframe, when we eat chocolate on a diet, this is me. Are we failing, or are we giving ourselves a reward for good work, letting ourselves off the hook occasionally, because you don't need to be permanently on this thing, celebrating our success, and maybe giving our sweets away. So those are some reframes. And I know that one of the hardest ones, I'm told by lots of people, are that our peers and colleagues are lazy. Because if we get that as a mindset, right, first of all, it's not helpful. Secondly, they will feel it at some level. I'm not sure what you say. Marie's got my phone talking to her. So these are things that will erode their resilience. Remember, that will be passed on, and it won't help us. So reframing is a very important tool. So after reframing, we've then got this thing called amplifying and catastrophizing. So for those of you who know any positive psychology, that this can be a big one. So I've just been working with a fantastic young man called Charlie. Charlie has got a big job. He's only 25. He's got quite a senior role in his startup company. It's not his, but he works in a startup. And he busted up with his girlfriend, and he told me that he was feeling bad about how he'd ended this relationship had ended, and that he therefore couldn't cope in life or at work. And so he was going to be a failure at his job and in relationships, and that he would never find himself a partner in life, right? And it was completely overwhelmed by this situation. So it's like, okay, bring him down. So we did the let's bring this down, a little bit breathing. And so when you amplify a situation and catastrophize, you don't help yourself. You're scaling this thing in your head, and we consider then ourselves to be helpless and hopeless. So the way to get through that is to say, okay, let's stop, right? Let's think, you've thought about the most negative outcomes. So now let's think about the mildly negative outcomes and what they might be, and then the neutral outcomes, the somewhat positive outcomes, and then the very positive outcomes. Because it's unlikely that lovely Charlie is never going to find himself a life partner, and he's never going to succeed at work. It's super unlikely, but in that moment you just can't see it. So that's how you do it for yourself and for others. So then we've got the dealing with the overwhelming thing. So we've already talked about breathing. Now, hopefully none of you are going to be feeling overwhelming emotion right now, but I do like a physical action. So if you even just put your hands together like this, or grab your forearms and massage them, the physical action is you feeling your body, right? Now, we most often feel tension and overwhelming emotion in the top of our body, right? Head, stomach. But if you grab your arms, right, you're doing something else, right? So you're just changing where the physicality is happening. So you can grab your hands. You often see people wringing their hands, don't you? Yeah. We'll wring our hands when we get that. You breathe. And then the thing is, so I was doing this with Charlie because he burst into floods of tears. We had the first meeting. He called me saying, I can't cope. I said, okay, right, come on, Charlie, let's recognise when you all the different emotions, because when you're feeling overwhelmed, you have to start breaking it down. So what are you feeling? So he was feeling sad, angry, hurt, frustrated, incapable. So let's list all these things. And then when you're in the listing of it, you're starting to rationalise. Then you go, okay, which is the most important one to you right now? So you can recognise a difficult emotion, and then remember that an emotion isn't a reaction. You are not that thing as well, and it isn't who you are, it's what you're experiencing. So I said, right, come on, just on the phone, walk out, let's get out of the office, and just keep walking and talking, and we'll work through what's going on, and then break it down. So we just honed in on the one thing, and it turned out the one thing that will make him feel better will be to talk to his landlord about his lease. I wouldn't have got that from this overwhelming emotion, but one of the things that was most worrying him was, where does he go and where does he live? So this overwhelming stuff can always be broken down until you feel better. And why you break it down is this wonderful research from a woman called Teresa Amabile, and the link is at the bottom, about the small win. And it is the small win that takes you away from this overwhelming thing. So it's tiny steps that make you feel you're on your way to achieving something. So it's those tiny steps are the things. That's tool 4. Tool 5. Now here you go. Look at this. Now that's my lovely daughter with the orange hair in the frame. I looked at the front of her screen, and that's on the front of her screen, and you can see she's got lots of shoes and clothes going on behind. But I let go of all tensions and worries. I operate, and everything else is a story. And don't you love that she was telling us that everything else is a story? So with that feeling of overwhelmment, well, it's a story she's telling herself. And don't you like her passwords? Bring you flowers. So this mantra that she's got, when she feels overwhelmed, this is the thing that she says to herself. Now you can have situation-specific self-talk and a general mantra. So if you want to work on that in a minute, you can do that. But when you've got, look what she's done. I let go of all tensions and worries. You're using the first person. So you don't talk to yourself as you, because if you talk to yourself as you dissociate from yourself, right? You want to be in you, and you don't want to be like the crazy old Sarah Ferguson, who was talking about Sarah didn't know what she was doing when she was in that situation. When she was last offered a bribe, she put herself in the situation of being offered a bribe, and then she had to apologise on air and go and talk to Oprah about it. Well, not all of us are so fortunate or so embarrassed, but you are associating with yourself. We know that dissociation is not helpful in remaining resilient. So then you see yourself through your own eyes and being successful if you have a situation-specific thing you need to do. So, for example, if you have a difficult presentation or a difficult conversation to have, you tell yourself that you can do it. You make it positive where you can. You see yourself, all your words coming out fluently, and then you visualize that other person seeing you with all the words coming out fluently. Now, my mantra for myself is I can or I will. I just keep it really, really brief and positive, because if you give yourself instructions, you're more likely to forget them, and the research is very clear on that. So something short, something positive. So that's situation-specific self-talk and or a mantra. So in a few minutes, I'm going to give you time for that. And this is the 6th resilience tool. So hope psychology, it's wonderful. Rick Snyder was the person who started thinking about hope psychology and how important it is. And telling us that what matters most is not that we are a hopeful person and we have a trait, because some of us are not hopeful people, but that we are hopeful about specific situations, and that those specific situations are the things that we bear in mind. So to be hopeful about a situation, we need a goal. It's the first thing. And then we need to develop 5 routes towards that goal. And why we need 5 is that when he went to the analysis of what works, if you have 5 routes towards a goal and one of them fails, you're more likely to keep going with the other 4. But if you only got 1 route to a goal and you fail, then your resilience is absolutely not for 6. So if you want to get, for example, a new job, you might need to think, okay, well, so I need to polish up my CV and make my LinkedIn profile better, and I need to reach out to people who might know where jobs are, and I might need to go to a recruitment agency, and I might need to reach back and see who I used to work with 5 or 10 years ago. And those would be 4 routes. And then the 5th might be the unexpected thing. Well, maybe I need to start going to some conferences that I've never been to before in order that I meet some new people. And those will be 5 routes to your goal of finding a new job. Because if you only have the one and it doesn't work, that won't be good for you. So the same when you're working as a leader with other people, how do you encourage them to find those 5 routes? And then the answer is look at each route and say, okay, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely am I to do it? Because if you say go to conferences and network with people I don't know, and that puts the heebie-jeebies into you, you're not going to do it. So if it's only a 3 out of 10, dump it. Don't put that on your list of one of the things you'll do, because you won't. So that's hope psychology, and again you can work with that in a few minutes. And tool 7, which I'm just drawing to your attention because we can't do this here and now, is to think about an app. And Headspace is fantastic for mindfulness. So if you want to develop mindfulness, Headspace, they've got 10-minute meditations every day, or 20 minutes, and they've got a special offer right now. So when I went and looked yesterday to check Headspace, you can download that, and there's an offer on right now, 10 free. There's also 3-minute mindfulness, so it's only in 3 minutes, and then woohoo, you've got 7-second meditation. So if you can have the 10 minutes, you can have the 3 minutes, or the 7 seconds, and it just sends you alerts to your phone, this app, 7-second meditation, and just reminds you to do some of these things. So if time is of the essence to you, hey, 7 seconds, and I've downloaded it and I'm having a go. So I'll let you know how that goes the next time round. So that's tool 7. So now what I would love to do is if you could get into pairs, and I'm going to give you 5 minutes each. And Marie, can you give me a time check?
Yeah, it is now 13:47.
So it's 13:47. So I'm going to give you
47.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you 5, so 10 minutes each. So we'll get back together in 10 minutes, and I would like to spend 5 minutes each thinking through either who you would like to build a growth mindset around and what would change if you did that, and what you might start thinking instead, or what positive self-talk or mantra, so self-talk specifically for a situation, or mantra for a general situation like my daughter, would help you. What situation would you like to reframe? And it might be a project or a task as well. What goal are you going to be hopeful about, and what's your 5 pathways? And if you just want to go and sit under a tree right now for 5 minutes, I'm all for that. So I'm going to give you 10 minutes time, and then we'll regroup for the last few minutes. So everybody, I'm sure I'm going to be cutting into some of your conversations, but if you want to put what you were talking about into chat, we'll leave it open for the next few minutes. And before you go, I've got a video that I would really like you to have a look at, and it's the new Heineken ad for beer. But actually it's called Worlds Apart, and it is, if you haven't seen it, it's a very heartwarming thing, and it shows how to go into a situation which you might lead to conflict, because they put 2 strangers who've got very, very different beliefs in there, but how when you go into something with a neutral mindset, how you completely get over what your differences might be. So I invite you before you go to either click on that link or copy it, or just put into YouTube Heineken Worlds Apart. So before you do that, just as a reminder, we've talked about a lot of tools today. We've done some body work and thought about body tools, and we've done some mind tools too. And so I recommend to you just to think about what would serve you, and when you come into situations which might erode your resilience, these are some of the tools and techniques which will help you manage difficult situations that you'll find yourself in, because sure as eggs is eggs, they come along like buses all the time, in groups when you least want them, and when you're really desperate for something and going, here I am, I can deal with that, it won't happen for you. So I'm looking forward to seeing you next time, and please do share some of the thoughts that you've been having on the call. Thank you so much for joining.